Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the first ACMP Singapore chapter event this year. We had a few last years, but this year this is our first event. It's also we're very close to be fully registered in Singapore, so this is more to come. But today we talk about diversity, specifically inclusion, a topic which is in everybody's mind, especially in March. International Women's Day has been just 10 days ago, and that's why we decided to look at inclusion because we think change management and inclusion has a lot of links. We have fantastic speakers on the panel today, but before that, I want to give the floor to Annie, our president of the ACMP Singapore chapter. Annie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, team, for organizing this event for us, right? So first and foremost, a very warm welcome to our speakers, our invited speakers, and also to all of you who took time off from your busy schedule to join us on this small event. So let me just introduce ourselves. Who are we? We are the ACMP Singapore chapter. ACMP stands for Association for Change Management Professionals. And we are an association dedicated to advancing the career growth of individuals who are interested in the space of change management, right? And our vision is to lead the way change works. And our vision statement reflects, an aspiration among all of us to really make an effort to take change in a more rigorous manner, and also to promote our professional area in change management. I think as I look around us now, in the areas where I'm working, I see people talking about change management, but they actually do not know what really is change management. And that is exactly what our chapter is about, right? Promoting the discipline of change management, creating that space for people to come together and share their best practices, etc. So that is our vision for the chapter. Team, can you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. And how do we want to do that, right? We want to do that. We want to promote individuals, the discipline around change management, and want to do that through building a community of practitioners, or people who are interested in change management, or people who are really using change management in their day-to-day life, or even in their own career capacity. So creating that space for people to share their knowledge and their thought leadership, promoting the value of change management. How often have all of you heard that change management is important, but when you look at the project plan, there's no change management in it? Right? Or change management is equal to communication only. Yeah. So people have a different different understanding of what change management, and that is what this chapter wish to do, to really promote the true discipline of change management, not only in Singapore but also around our region, right? And collaborate with other regions as well. So in our region, we have a very active and big chapter in Australia, which we are collaborating very closely with also. So we are a chapter of the global ACMP, which is based in Washington, DC. Right. So back to you, team.
Thank you very much, Annie. And I still remember I've been part of ACMP for I think I joined in 2017 or even earlier, and I still remember when I joined an ACMP conference in Europe that I said, why are we not doing anything in Asia? And now we are here, right? We have we have the chapter here in Singapore, reaching out to the region. We have our friends in Australia and New Zealand, and this is really become a great long way, and advancing the practice here. No. Thank you very much. So I want to introduce who are we having here. Who are we having here on the panel? And I later will switch off the slides so that we can see the people as well. So first of all, I want to introduce Betul Geng. She's the managing director, or no, senior vice president of Adecco Group here in the ASEAN region. Adecco Group is a recruitment agency close to me as a Swiss national, a Swiss company having here on board. So that's really, really fantastic to see. Thank you very much. I'll give you later some time to introduce yourself as well. So thank you very much for joining Betul. We have from the Arbinger Institute, a very interesting institute, bringing change in many different forms to organization. We have Zujun as the head of consulting here. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to be joining as well. And my friend Steve, very warm welcome to Steve Marengos as well. We've been working together in Huntsman. Always regarded Steve as a very inclusive, supportive leader, and he's currently heading the region, the Asian region of ACCC Group and ASCC Group, which is an Australian chemical distribution company, and Steve is responsible basically for everything outside of Australia, right? That's a little bit the point as well. So very warm welcome to all the three of you. So I'll be hosting. So myself is Tim Beringa. So I'm the secretary and events manager for the ACMP Singapore, among other hats as well. But today I'm that. So let me switch off the slide and come a little bit to the questions. As I mentioned before, this is the month of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the DEI month. Although that's something we should practice all along, and I see the topic has been evolved and strengthened over the past years a lot. And many people might not know, but this topic is very close to my heart as well. And you might think, why? So as a Swiss national, I grew up in Switzerland as a foreigner. My parents are not from Switzerland. I might look similar to most of the Swiss people, but still, I felt that I grew up as a foreigner in Switzerland. And that's why this topic of inclusion is very, very important to me as well. At the same time now, like it depends on how you count, for 15, maybe almost 20 years, I'm living outside living a lot outside of Switzerland or outside of Europe. And for me, what is just amazing to be outside of your own country is what you can learn. And I think this is maybe the underlying theme, a little bit of inclusion as well. What can I learn from others? Because it's a fantastic journey. Just a little bit this as an introduction as well to the topic inclusion, later linking it as well then also to change management. But I want to jump in right now. So as I mentioned, the topic of DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, has been coming along a long way. There's still a long way to go as well, and in many ways, in many different ways. But Betul, maybe I ask you to start off as well, a little bit looking at coming from your direction as well. What is the state of current affairs, 2024? Where are we today? Where can we see where the improvements happen, and what are still the key challenges which we're facing?
Thank you, Tim. Well, a warm good morning to everyone, and thanks ACMP for hosting this very important topic. I guess it's something really very close to all of us as we live and breathe, in a country, in a nation where we do see a multicultural nation. And I guess, Tim, to your question, we would all agree that Singapore has made tremendous efforts to make sure that the workforce is fostered in a way to make sure that it's diverse and everyone feels that sense of belonging. I guess from a regulatory body perspective, I would say the government has implemented initiatives. We do have the Fair Consideration Framework, the Tripartite Workplace Fairness Commissions, which addresses the discrimination and promoting equal opportunities. But it's not only the governance or the framework that we create, from a regulatory body perspective, how organizations embrace it and how do they, live and breathe with these in their day-to-day activities and their day-to-day tasks is, I guess, what we're going to be discussing today. Again, from a regulatory body perspective, it would be fair to mention that, there are grants available for companies to encourage them to hire, train, retrain, and deploy, inclusive workforce, not limited to gender, not limited to background, but I also refer to people with disabilities or the vulnerable societies that is truly important to make sure that we bring into the workforce. On the gender part, I would say, most listed organizations in Singapore have their board policies. And we all know, we've been reading, now and then, that there is a big gap in terms of women representation in board, women representation in major leadership roles. I guess that's an area where we can collectively, work together, making sure that we bring that awareness into what we do every day. We make sure that there is inclusivity and there is that sense of belonging, and also creating that acceptance for them to really help them feel empowered, contribute to the overall success of the business, and feel that they are also, valued within the organization. So those I would say are already, in place. But again, from a challenge perspective, I've mentioned the gender equality. I think the representation of minority groups as well is also a challenge that many organizations are facing. And again, I'd like to highlight the inclusivity for people with disabilities as challenges that are still out there for all of us to address.
Thank you very much, Betul. Very, very great insight, and you are at the forefront with Adecco to understand all these topics, and this is really great. Maybe from a different lens as well, Sujin, how do you see the topic of evolving from a perspective of the Arvind Institute?
Great. So hi, everyone. And just a little bit about myself. I really enjoy your introduction, team, because like yourself, I've lived in 4 different countries now. This is my number 4 in Singapore. I might look like a local, but actually I'm not. So inclusion is definitely a big thing. Now, coming back to your question, I think where Arvind is coming from is more from a training consulting perspective. So what we have seen currently is there is definitely a positive shift in regards to inclusion, diversity, and equity, even the sense of belonging, right? All those areas. And particularly, we see more of the year-round activities going on, initiatives. And those programs has replaced isolated events during designated month, like Pride Month or March, Women's Day, and stuff like that. And those year-round initiatives definitely demonstrating a deeper commitment, but there are some efforts, I would say, still remain on surface level, and it's largely compliance-driven. So, for example, those focuses could be following the trends. Like a lot of the times companies want to match competitor initiatives rather than a genuine desire for change. And the other thing is visibly diverse metrics. Like Bantu mentioned, there are so many things, right? Women, disabled, a group, LGBTQ, and so on. So those are still visibly diverse metrics for us, and we tend to prioritize easily identifiable demographics like races, ages, genders, and so on. And the last thing and remain a challenge is in a lot of organizations, EDI still remains as focus on quota, and it is a numbers game. We want to focus on the percentage and the representations of different groups in different areas. So that's, I would say, currently what the challenges still are. In regards to training and specifically the details go into the programs, there is a lot of program focused on behavior modification and compliance. So for example, anti-harassment, discrimination training, and inclusive language training, accessibility training, and so on. But there is not enough programs and initiatives for tracking the why behind what we normally talk about, the unconscious and conscious biases. So that's from my perspective.
No, that's very insightful, and I think from how I see it, with my knowledge, diversity, a little bit the numbers, inclusion is really the behavior and the mindset behind it, and then equity is actually the reason why we should do it. It's creating that fairness. So that's I like the challenges you mentioned, and maybe then also let's plug it out, pick it up a little bit in a later stage. But I want to Steve, you're coming from very traditional industries, and I've been working in these industries as well, chemical being one and cement being another, which are traditionally very male-dominated, looking at one angle of diversity. What change have you seen over the last years in this direction?
Sure, Tim. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to ACMP to contribute to this quite important discussion. Maybe a little bit about myself. I'm a chemical guy. I had a teacher in high school who really brought the passion of science out. He went from blackboard to practical very, very well, and that sparked a passion in chemistry for me. So I pursued a career in the chemical industry, originally from Melbourne, Australia, but worked in the US and for the last 15 years based here in Singapore in various different functional roles across the chemical industry. And so along with that brings a lot of change, and over the period of time you start to understand how important diversity, equity and inclusion are, and how they can be powerful in developing high-performing teams. So perhaps I can contribute really just from a business standpoint. Perhaps just the meaning and definition of diversity, inclusion and equity. Perhaps we can start with that. And I remember earlier in my career, I had a boss, a supervisor, very creative, and his definition really struck a chord with not just myself, I think, but across a wider group. And just to explain the situation back then, 10 or 15 years ago, we were in a multinational corporation, very country-based, and the company reorganized to become regional, so an Asia-Pacific business. And he brought us all together here in Singapore, put us all in one room, and he put up one slide for his entire presentation. And we thought, what is he up to? And he put up one slide of a stained glass window from the Sistine Chapel. And he asked us all, what did we see? And we all saw a beautiful image, a beautiful stained glass window and so on. And he said, look, you've got to look deeper than that. And he said, this window is made up of thousands of pieces, of individual pieces. And they're all a different color and they're all a different shape. And he said, as individuals, we can go about our life just like the individual pieces in this stained glass window. But when we bring it together, it produces a beautiful image. And he said that, you know, we're all different shapes, we're all different sizes, but we've all got a contribution to the overall aim of what we're trying to achieve here. And I thought that was a really good example of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That's a very nice story, and I think in an age where we think very much on black and white, I think I also try to push to allow people to think in colors, right? I mean that, and I'll take up that story, and I think it's a really good story to look at the stained glass window and seeing, yeah, this is actually full of colorful elements in it, and what you see is a beautiful picture. And if we have a window, I mean, as most of the windows are in our buildings are just of one color, it's not so exciting, it's not so beautiful. And I think that this is really, I like that story. Thank you very much, Steve, for sharing. Where do we want to go next of that? And I think, I mean, Steve, you started to look a little bit more, okay, what is the business impact? What is the business impact on that? And I want to maybe come apart as well, Betul, coming back to you. In your practice, I mean, Adecco is pushing that the recruitment and the hiring is in different, coming from different sides, having a having a diverse numbers, and coming back to the numbers, Zujun, but I definitely need to go beyond that. What what are the reasons for pushing that forward? I mean, you said sometimes it's just ticking the boxes, but how can we really make people see this is actually for my business, this is for profit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with a wider scope of perspective, you come about solving problems or developing opportunities from completely different angles. And it's very important as a manager, as a leader, that you have a very open perspective on this. It's not necessarily what's worked in the past will work in the future. And it touches on many areas, including change management. And I think we had an example here in our business recently where we're a specialty chemical distribution company. So warehousing and logistics is business critical because we have to source from our suppliers, we have to supply to our customers. So the distribution part of our business is very, very important, business critical, as I said. And some time ago, maybe 12 months ago, we just signed a new agreement with our existing supplier here. And it wasn't, so a long-term agreement, it wasn't 6 months into that new agreement that I received a call from the receiver saying that the company's gone or is going bankrupt. But not to worry, that there'll be a new multinational company that will come in and look to take over, and it'll be business continuity. And of course, time went on, and I started to get a little nervous because the clock's ticking and we didn't know what the future looked like in a critical area. And I then got a call from the multinational company that was going to take over. They reinforced business continuity until I saw their price. And their price was to keep the business ongoing was 3 times more than what we were paying previously, which meant that our business would have been unsustainable. We couldn't go on with a cost increase of times 3. Not only that, we had, because time had gone on, we only had 28 days to take some action, find a new warehouse provider, get into some discussions about an agreement, and then actually do the transition in an environment where that market space, very, very tight in Singapore. So basically, it was all hands on deck. And this is where we saw the power of the team, the power of diversity, the power of inclusion, equity, because everybody, once we spelt out what we had to do and why it was important, the team really understood what the objective was. And we went through this period where it was the only thing we did. We worked on weekends, and then it came to identifying a partner. We did that, and I think we had 5 days to move, which normally would have taken 3 weeks, and the whole exercise normally would have taken 3 or 4 months. But we managed to achieve it in 28 days, maybe 1 day up our sleeve. And here we saw people that otherwise would have been individual contributors actually taking centre stage and really starting to run the transition. And in summary, we ended up doing this transition, recognising those people who understood their role in this situation, in this environment, understanding how critical their contribution was, and of course we recognised them afterwards and we celebrated our successes. There's a lot in there. I'm trying to summarise, but I saw that as a real positive example of just including everyone for a team goal, achieving something that was very, very necessary and important, business critical, as I say, to lead to a positive outcome.
What made the situation different, Steve, in that particular case? What made it inclusive? how did you, or how did the relevant people switch it in a way? Yes, let's work together. Let's take everybody's strength in, as diverse as we are.
In the past, Tim, this would have been handled by one function, so the supply chain function, purchasing and supply chain function. But really, given the enormity of what was in front of us, we realised very, very quickly 3 people couldn't handle this job. It really needed the entire group, the entire 17 team members. Didn't matter whether you were in finance or sales or handling samples or customer service. Everybody needed to contribute for us to take on a task that would otherwise have taken 3 or 4 months to 1 month. And so once we explained the purpose of what we were trying to achieve here, what it meant for people, really what it meant for people was ongoing job security. So it was very, very high with respect to importance. Once that was clear, the purpose, then it was all about, well, how can I contribute to this? What can I do to help? And then we became far more task-driven. And then we split up into sort of smaller teams, because we had people a team at the warehouse that was going broke, and people at the new warehouse, so outgoing and incoming. Great coordination, and we managed to pull it off.
Basically, then looking at people who have never done warehousing, making sure, picking up their strengths, how they could contribute to contribute to.
So they have a different scope. So a finance person would have a different scope.
Yeah, exactly.
A person would have a different scope. So we made sure the teams that we put together had that diversity in functions, so that we didn't miss anything.
That's a fantastic story. Betul, what do you make out of that story? I'm just curious how you hear the story. What are your thoughts around
Well,
that?
first thing first, it's a very powerful story, Steve. Kudos to you guys. I mean, it's not easy. I know particularly that industry isn't the easiest to operate in Singapore from a workforce perspective as well. So big congratulations to all of you. I think, Tim, what I can say to bring it into maybe a little bit more on a business concept, we know that, to define diversity, let me start with that. I mean, Steve had a very good definition. I love the one with, all those different shapes and sizes and colors. But when we look at, maybe more from a business concept and what diversity means, it is all about having a work environment which is filled with employees of different backgrounds, different skills, different experiences, different knowledge, and having them coordinating very nicely as well. I saw it on the chat as well. Someone was mentioning about the orchestrate and the symphony and all the different instruments into that. I guess it's all about that. But why is it important for business? I think that's what we need to understand as well. We know that the increase in innovative and creation has massive impact on the outcome. And that's all what we're trying to achieve, right? It is either increasing our top line, meaning higher growth, or increasing the bottom line, meaning higher profitability. But we all try to, achieve the same. And that wouldn't be possible unless we bring the entire team into that. So that's crucial for every organization to succeed. It is important for sustainable business. It is important for increased productivity within the workforce. And then when we look at talent and how we retain and how we attract talent, in fact, it is known that, having a diverse, inclusive and equity, balanced workforce increases retention for those that feel that they are valued and they have a voice to contribute. They want to stay longer. And it also attracts new people, because once you see that you can be who you are and contribute to the business, I think that makes it very crucial for those new people, new prospect candidates, to consider this as, an opportunity for them to work. individuals are motivated, individuals are engaged, and that is, I think, the most important pillars of success within an organization. All in all together, this helps the organization to be sustainable and also powerful in the long run as well. I would say, it is also having an authentic and safe workplace, because once people feel that they can contribute with their ideas without being, regarded of what their background or what their skills are, but really seen as someone who brings ideas, that also makes the workplace extremely inclusive. Finding acceptance in, it is also very empowering, and it's also a very big step to unleash the potential in everyone. Today, especially in our line of business, where it's people business, every organization is tackling the same challenge. It's all about our people. How do we retain them? How do we attract them? How do we ensure that they are engaged and motivating? This is not about whether they come 5 days to the office or 3 days to the office. If they are working fully remote, they can still be very engaged and motivated, which definitely helps to the success of the organization. And one very important drive for this is creating that safe and diverse workplace where everyone feels empowered, so they could really bring what they want into the organization. It's all about bringing the color from each and every of us to the success of the organization.
No, thank you very much, Betula. That reminds me also on the fact that culture is the space between people. That's one definition of culture. So it's a space between people. I like that definition, because it basically means if you have a company culture, it's the space which is between each individual employee within the organization. So we cannot create a culture without the people being involved. And then for sure, each individual employee is shaping the culture in one way or another. And I think that's maybe then also supporting the fact we need to consider, we need to include, we need to listen, we need to make these people willing to speak up in an organization in order to create, to shape or to nudge a culture in a direction we want to do.
Indeed.
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe just to add, you've heard me saying this before, but when we talk about DEI, I love saying that it is in your DNA. It's who you are as an organization, as an individual, and the people around you, the team members, your customers, anyone within your supply chain really understands about it. Because once you push ideas to be more inclusive, once you challenge them, once you ask other people's opinions, that creates that safe environment, and that contributes a lot to the culture. I just wanted to add that.
No, that's so true. It's so true. So, Tidjun, you're working a lot with different organizations which want to bring a different kind of mindset and drive and behavior within the organization. Why are they doing that? And I know why they're doing that, but I want you to share with us, why are these companies so I feel that they're quite progressive, because there's a big number of companies who would not spend money on these topics.
Well, I probably have to go back to the piece of beautiful glass analogy again. Like, that we're all from different shapes, different colors, we have different roles to play. But simply, I would say just putting those pieces together is not going to create a diversity and inclusion. Because you might have a piece that doesn't want to be there. You might have a piece that doesn't feel belong there. You might have a piece that doesn't see the purpose there, right? So when we focus on the mindset, or organizations come to us and focus on the mindset, it's simply because they have done everything they can. Like Steve's story, again, the different representations of different groups in a team, agile, right? But we've seen agile succeed in many companies. We also see the same composition of the team, those so-called agiles, fail in many organizations as well. So the question goes back to, what if you have a team that is totally diverse, but there is no inclusion? which drives a different point actually when we talk about inclusion and then use the mindset methodology to drive it. We don't talk about inclusion anymore. We talk about something deeper, belonging. Because without and I think it's easier for people to agree on this one, the belonging is a psychological necessity and the basic human requirements. So we also want to belong in the organization where we can function better. And in fact, statistically, 40% of people reporting feeling isolated at work will result in them functioning as a suboptimal level and working below their potential. So this belonging or this sense, psychological need, is not something that you can just tell people to do. You cannot have 5 people together in a team and say, there you go, that's belonging. There is a mindset to it. Okay? So organizations are looking at changing the mindset of people and how we create this sense of belonging, because very simply, it helps with engagement. When employees feel they are affiliated with their organization, their colleagues, they can work better. And they also nurture inclusivity in the company. And what about happiness? People feel happier. Well, I feel I belong to the team. I belong to the company. I want to do better. And ultimately, it contributes to performance. Because imagine this, that every day you think about going to work, you don't want to go because you don't like the people there, because you don't feel, why am I going to the office when I can do my work at home? And then this sense of belonging is lacking. Then the people's performance is going to be undermined. Okay? So that's a simple reason why people are looking for a mindset solution. On the other hand, there are issues in EDI area that cannot be resolved with a behavior solution. For example, subconscious or unconscious biases. Like, we know we should accept the different ideas. We know the standard answer is we need to be open-minded, but there will be time when I'm not doing it. So what's the point of knowing the right answer? We must unlock, how am I seeing myself and how am I seeing other people that's contributing to me not able to do the right thing in a given moment. So that's why a lot of companies come to us and they're looking for a mindset solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what everybody sees. I'm basically knowing what to say, but it doesn't come from the heart. The authenticity is missing. And then people, I mean, it's amazing how well human being can sniff out when somebody just says something and doesn't mean it, right? And I think this is what we need to be aware of. And that's what a lot of, when I talk to different leaders as well, they know what to do, but they know the right behavior, they know what they need to do. It's just so easy to fall into old habits and the wrong habits.
Yeah, most of us know what is the right thing to do, but we just fail to do that. And we need to focus on explaining that. And that's the mindset.
And I think, I mean, I'm a very strong supporter and believer in diversity and specifically in inclusion, the way also Steve mentioned that. And when you talk to traditional leaders, it's actually a very simple thing. You want to become more innovative, you want to become more productive, you want to increase your top line, you want to increase your bottom line. This is why inclusion is so important. Saying all these things, and there was in a recent discussion as well with leaders which have a very good understanding on inclusion, but their observation is, and I see that observation coming from different sides and different parts in the society here in Singapore, but it goes beyond that. It's just, I'm mentioning Singapore because we all, or most of us, are here right now, but I see that, I'm sure that happens in other parts of the world as well, that the work life has become very transactional. And I think this is something which is related to that as well. I mean, it's a little bit but I mean, this transactional came up what Betul said before, but what you just mentioned, Sejun, as well. When I don't want to come to work anymore, I just do, and it's a little bit related. I mean, you run a session recently about quiet quitting, right? It's a little bit related to that as well, although it might not be exactly the same thing, but just doing the right thing. I mean, I'm doing something, and because of that, you're doing something. So that it's all very transactional. And the missing point here, and I think that's what you have mentioned, is belonging, right? I mean, where is that sense of belonging? Maybe where does that transactional feeling or that transactional behavior come from? What are your thoughts? Any of you? I mean,
I think, Tim, if I can just extend on maybe Zijun's point about forming teams, and just putting people together doesn't necessarily form a team. It's still just a number of individuals that are part of a group. Let's say one of the things I've found quite powerful in going the next step in trying to form a team is, okay, you get to work with people, you get to understand each other. But there was, again, another example in my career where, to try and go the next step, we were all asked to do personality tests with the people that we were working with, so that we understood the perspective and angle that they were coming from. And so we all went away, we did Myers-Briggs testing, we came back together, we got into our individual groups. We had a facilitator who explained actually what the 16 boxes meant, and perhaps why some people saw things in a different perspective than others. And for many of us, the penny had dropped. So it wasn't because this person doesn't see what we see, it's they're coming in looking at the same problem, the same opportunity, the same scene, but from a completely different perspective in terms of how they internalize that, how they perceive it. And the trick then was to bring all those aspects, perspectives, and strengths together. And it was quite powerful. So I think that point from Tuljin is quite important.
Thank you.
It starts with understanding each other, right? I mean, the simple understanding, everybody is a different set of glasses, right?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
I think perhaps just to continue this and then coming back to your question, this sense of transactional interaction between people, where does it come from? And I dare say it comes from the space that too often when we go to work, each one of us, there are more moments that we focus on ourselves than moments we focus on the collective good. And we're all fall into that trap, right? No one is innocent in this space. But what happens is, I wouldn't say the focus on yourself is wrong, because you also need to take care of yourself. But what a lot of people fail to understand is the consequence. When I'm focused on myself, what is the impact I'm bringing to the people around me? And as long as I'm not paying attention to that impact, then I will feel self-focus is the right way to go, and maybe the only way to go. And that actually create, as we talk about DEI, this sense of exclusion. And that's fundamentally one of the reasons that creates this sense of transactional interaction at work. Yeah, so I would say that.
It's a strong individualism. Betul, I wanted to bring in as well.
Yes,
So
I
you
was
have a
just
lot of thoughts around
unmuting
that.
myself. Well, Zijun very well said. I think it's a shift that we see on how organizations also, position themselves and how they want to tackle those challenges. I wouldn't say there is only one thing that goes into that. There is a new generation coming into workforce, which is really changing the way we interact, which is changing the way we work. I'm not going to say, that transaction is purely driven by that, but it has been more and more individualistic targets, individual achievements that we've been, trying to achieve for our own success. Whereas we know from a compensation perspective, assigning team targets, making sure that the team targets, including collaboration and their overall success, plays a massive role in the organization's success. I think we've been delinking that more and more, maybe without knowing, which then resulted in silos. People just, focusing on their own tasks, on their own, deliverables, and making sure that what I do impacts me only. I guess it's also a point, we all talk about purpose, and we know when we start linking the why better to what we do, it's a stronger impact, because I might be working, on tiny place of an organization, but if I don't know what my contribution impacts the entire purpose of the organization and how it really helps maybe another team to pick it up from there and finalize, then I feel myself lost in that entire transaction, unless someone really tells me, hey, what you do means this to this organization. That's why it's important that you continue doing it. You try to excel in it. It's all about, having that conversation. I might say, what we've been observing based on some of the surveys we also conducted in Adecco, especially during COVID, where the entire workplace, the workforce have seen massive transformation. One thing we also encountered was, the middle managers who has been promoted at that time really didn't have the people skills that is really required to manage. And unless those connections were made, unless they were really told about their impact on managing their teams would have to the bigger organization, I think that's where the big gaps have also, encountered. I guess we also face the same within our organization. It's a people business. We don't have any tools. We don't have any production. So it's all about our people. So it's every day us trying to highlight what it means for us on their contribution, what it means for us that they excel in what they do, they try to achieve or aim for better, for higher, which then connects. And the more we do, I feel the more that individualistic approach then, removes that walls around it or the barriers, which makes it more inclusive. And that when you are part of a team, that you've got someone you could rely, there is, people that you could depend on. They would be there for you. They would also help you grow as an individual, not only, as an organization. Then that transactional approach kind of leaves it to a more collaborative approach. And that's what I guess every organization is, trying to achieve for their long-term sustainable goals.
I think I would like to add a little bit to that. I think that's beautifully said. And one of the things that I normally tell my client is, inclusion is not what you do. It's not a behavior you demonstrate. It's how you do it. Right? Exactly like Steve's story, how you form the team, how you make that communication. So similarly, when we talk about this transactional interaction between each other, it's not what you do, right? You can do it. You can be an individual contributor. You have your own KPIs. That doesn't matter as much as how you're actually going about your job. And I think Betu, you mentioned one thing about this collective goal needs to be communicated clearly throughout the team. That's exactly the point. And the other thing, on the other hand of this performance or KPI, is how we actually measure it. Because traditionally, the measurement focuses on what I'm able to achieve. And if I'm only being compensated on my own results, then inevitably I will focus on my own results. But if we can change the way to measure that, one of the things that we can focus on is how do I measure my results based on, number one, what I can achieve, and number two, what I'm able to enable other people or help other people to achieve. Then that will fundamentally change the way I think about my job. It's naturally more inclusive. And if I can work in this way, you don't even have to worry about inclusion, because naturally people will be talking to each other. They want to clarify. They want to engage. So that's a beautiful point that you brought up.
In my practice, what I'm trying to convince companies to do is when they go about target setting. So that's one of the topics which I'm often engaged in, where I talk about target setting. Actually, that you stop setting targets on a team level. That you say, okay, we're deriving, we have the purpose, and I think that's what Betul mentioned earlier as well. People's daily job, they need to see a link to the company purpose, and that's actually one thing to do. You translate the thing. But what I'm suggesting, let's stop creating individual targets and individual KPIs and keep that on a team level, and then let the team figure out and be self-organized about it, how they achieve these team KPIs. And I think this is where we can go a little bit away from individualism, put a stronger focus on teams, and put a strong focus on collaboration. I want to come back to you, Steve. Listening to, Betul and Sijin have shared amazing stuff from your perspective, very practical, small company, you need to drive things forward. What are some very practical daily work stuff you have introduced to drive inclusion?
To drive it, well, first of all, putting people together that wouldn't naturally come together to get the full scope of possibilities. And that's why Sijun's point before about just putting people together and expecting a team to form is very important, quite powerful. And also on to Betel's point where, promoting people into management roles without the people skills tends to drive a culture where knowledge dominates. So if you know more than anybody else, then your way normally is the way that is how the decisions are made, and they're not necessarily the right decisions. So training young managers to ask the right questions so that they get an inclusive perspective of an opportunity, a problem, whatever, just business, is really, really, really important. So some of those are just day-to-day stuff, right? Just asking the right questions, making sure that all bases are covered, to use just to use a colloquialism. These things are important in making people think, and then once they, and then driving higher performing teams. I think another area that I like this idea where DI just comes about naturally because it produces better results. And so we had I guess an unusual example here in our small business where we, as part of the company owners network, I was introduced to a young finance guy who worked at a bank here in Singapore, a well-known bank. And he was relatively junior in the business world, but had a very good title. And he wanted to leave the bank and join another company. And because he had the network with the owners, I was introduced to him, and I said to him, why would you want to leave a very safe, comfortable role in a bank that has quite good status, both personally and and to the outside world externally? And he said because he's a young guy, maybe in his mid-20s, looked at his supervisor and his supervisor's supervisor, and he could see them, and nothing against being routine and comfort, but he could see his supervisors 10 years down the track, going through the motions, going through the same tasks, the same job, day upon day. And he said he didn't want to do that. Nothing wrong with that. People, many people want that sort of stability, but it wasn't for him. So he was prepared to go from quite a good role in a commercial bank to a small, privately owned chemical distributor that nobody knew. And so he made the move to join us, and he brought in a completely different perspective, particularly commercially, because we had a sales force at that time that wasn't particularly aggressive, and he came in and had a completely different view on how we should sell, how we should go to the market. And it's produced some, I've got to say, in a relatively short period of time, 12 months, some outstanding results. Still got a lot to learn in terms of the chemical world and how businesses run, but this different perspective that he has brought on, just going about approaching your market, approaching your customers, and how to sell and understand value, has been incredibly beneficial for us.
I mean, who had thought that a banker is becoming your best salesperson?
Incredible, totally incredible. In fact, when he goes out and sees our stakeholders, our suppliers and customers now, and they ask, what's your background? And they get shocked when they realize he's come from a banking.
And that's inclusivity in practice, right? It's really a fantastic example again. I have to quickly mention that it really feels like a fantastic chat among the four of us. I know there's questions waiting as well, but I still want to make it that link between change management, inclusivity and change management. And I have my opinion as being a change management practitioner for more than a decade. Where do you see how these topics link together? How do you see these topics coming back together? Inclusivity, change management. Where do you see the link? Maybe who wants to go first?
Perhaps I can go first. I'm not going to cover everything, but a very unique point, I suppose. When people talk about change management, what I see from a lot of the organizations that I work with, they think about, for example, digital transformation, take care of people, well-being, DEI, right? So it means all those different areas are different pillars. But that's kind of like a dangerous way to think about it, right? Like I always said, DEI is not what you do, it's how you do it. So it has to be the way we are doing about digital transformation, taking care of people and well-being. Are we doing in an inclusive way? So in short, right, we need to rethink inclusion. And I think a few questions that will be really helpful. One is, are our change strategies inherently inclusive? Right? Are we thinking about having the right people in the right team? What about the impact on all stakeholders? Second question, do our communication channels foster open and equitable conversation? If you don't have, for example, skip level conversations, then how do you ensure the system is supporting transparency? Right? And the third thing, our views and process development procedures built in with inclusion in mind. If not, right, it doesn't really matter how much we talk about DEI, it's not going to thrive and take roots in the organization. So I think the way to connect change management and DEI is really to rethink the framework we adopt in change management and relook at the three questions I just mentioned, right? Is DEI the philosophy, the strategy, formulation in its core? Because if not, it does not support the DEI anymore. And on the other hand, if change management is done in an inclusive way, then you'll see the benefits of people becoming more engaged. They find purpose. Retention will not be much of a problem anymore. You'll find it easier to attract talents. And you'll also find it easier for people to innovate, and which you will see an influx in performance. So that's how it collect or correlate to each other, in my view.
It's almost that inclusion is not like it's inclusion is part of change management, or change management is part of inclusion, right? It's a bit like, yeah. But it's funny you said if change management is done in an inclusive way. I would actually argue if somebody sees change management in a non-inclusive way, then it's not change management. But it's a little bit my experience in change management. Betul, how do you see the two topics linked together?
I mean, well said by Zijun. I think, we can't really think about change management and not being inclusive. It goes hand in hand. Otherwise, there is no point in even discussing that. I guess the transparent communication, which Zijun also mentioned, is extremely important. When we look at all those people that are impacted with the change management, I guess it's super important to bring it to their level and, framework it in a way that is really understandable by them. If we leave it very high level, where we expect everyone to understand what their role is in that journey and what is expected from them, it might be a big, overlook in ensuring that it's inclusive. I think it's all about having that 5-10 minute conversation with them to make sure that they feel they are respected, they feel they are, part of this organization, and create that sense of belonging in linking up what we're trying to do and what their role or how instrumental they are in driving that. It's all about those little bridges, those little connections that we can create, which would then eventually, lead to the bigger change that the organization is trying to drive as well. And there should also be some support systems that is in place. I mean, for someone who needs further information, understanding, they should feel comfortable. It could be either your HR, or you could create maybe a smaller group of, where you communicate that they can be approached in case there is, further questions, comments, or any concerns that they have. So they excuse me, they know that there is a support system that would be available for them in case things do not go as planned. I guess as long as the communication, the transparent communication and the support systems is in place, I don't see why it wouldn't really work. And again, I mean, of course, we can't consider change management without any sort of inclusion at all. So that goes hand in hand.
No, definitely. I think, if you practice change management as change management is supposed to be, then you automatically need to be respectful. You need to engage the stakeholders. You need to look at that. You need to drive the longer picture, and that means being inclusive and involving everybody. And at the same time, change management, if you have a DEI transformation initiative, change management can help with all its structure and elements to bring this transformation to a success. Steve, how do you see the link? I saw you wanted to share something.
Yeah, sure. Maybe. But the speakers have really explained very well the connection. I guess the only other thing I can contribute here is to say that I think change management and diversity are intimately linked, almost by definition, because if you recognise that, let's say, a team or a group or whatever the case may be, a business needs to change. If you don't have a different perspective, in other words, a change, then it will be very, very difficult to try and achieve the change management targets that you're trying to achieve. So they're intimately linked, and in fact, you can use diversity to bring in that different scope to drive the change. And then it's a case of making sure that everybody go through the process. You understand why you need to change.
You mentioned early on that diversity inclusion will drive better solutions, or you will be able to identify better solution, and that's the most maybe another element adding to that as well. When you go through any change, digital transformations, entering new markets, moving your offices, could be anything that you then actually, because you include inclusivity, right? Because you include a wider population, a diverse population, you will come up with solutions which you would never have thought of before, and this will facilitate the change in a positive way. There's questions popping up. We had this coffee chat for almost an hour, I think about 15 minutes now. I want to bring in the other people as well. I want, Leon, if I allow me to start with you, you brought in a question of what are common misinterpretations of DEI, but maybe Leon, take the mic and share the context of your question.
Thank you, Tim. My question, actually, Robert answered it, that sometimes it's being interpreted as anti-competitive, taking his example that sometimes it becomes a zero-sum game, that, when you're trying to put in some equity and inclusivity, then sometimes you tend to prioritize that over finding the right people for the job. So it's very difficult to balance it, and sometimes people go against it because it's been misinterpreted. I think, based on my experience before, when I'm still recruiting people into my team, it's very difficult to make sure, okay, I want equity, I want inclusivity, but then I need to find the right talent. And then if the talent pool is quite limited, it's really very difficult to balance it. That's where my question is coming from. Thank you.
Betul, do you want to take that up? You're on mute, sorry.
Oh, so sorry. I was just saying, as a recruiter within the group, let me try to take that. Well, Leon, that's a very good question. And I think it's a fair challenge every organization is also experiencing. I guess I'd like to take a step back and really understand what drives that, recruitment process and why we're trying to be specific with certain things over there. Let me rephrase what I'm trying to say. If you're talking about an industry which is highly male dominated and we're trying to hire a female over there, and the only idea is, we need a female person to start increasing the numbers, I think it's defeating the purpose over there. If we are completely, overseeing the fact that we are not looking people for their skills, we are not looking for someone who is required to bring that color and diversity, but we're just trying to tick numbers. It's the same that applies with women in boards as well. When we look at all those changes, is it because I am there because I'm only a female? Is it only because I'm there because of my background, because of my, religion, or my nationality? I guess that's where we are, kind of sidetracked. As long as we keep that inclusion based on skills, based on what they can bring into that conversation, it would then help, sometimes justify why the candidate you have selected might not be hitting the gender target, but it's a good fit because it brings that diversity from a background or from a skills perspective into that equation, I would say. So it's not only about, what we want to achieve, but more in a holistic way, why we're trying to achieve it as well. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I think that's a very strong point that you said, that it's not about to be diverse. It's about, okay, you are there because you are not discriminated. You have the talent. You are you are what the organization need, and you are not discriminated against anything else. Yes. I think that's a very strong point that I got there. Thank you, Vitro.
I think thank you, Leon. Thank you, Betul. I think it's what Sijun, you mentioned as well. I think half an hour ago. With one challenge or one danger is to just play the numbers game, right? And as Robert says in the chat, inclusion is an attitude. It's not a skill. It's not the numbers. And I think what maybe a first step is to take away prejudges according to any criteria, might it be gender, skin color, hair color, eye color, all of these attributes or criteria that we are stopping prejudges and just stand in front of a human being and say, "Who are you? I'm curious. I want to learn." And I think this is a bit.
I would add to this question, so when we talk about discrimination or biases, it could be from two different perspectives. One is individual, the other one is systematic, right? So if we're talking about recruitment and the specific KPI for the recruiters to recruit a women, then that might be a systematic anti-DEI KPI itself. So that's one area. And the other area, I would say, is a common, not misinterpretation, but misoperation of DEI is actually compromised meritocracy. Like Betul was saying, I went to conferences when people talk about, how do we balance meritocracy and diversity? The right word is not balance. You cannot balance it because you cannot compromise our meritocracy. Organizations exist for a reason, to deliver the results. Organizations don't exist because we need 5 guys and 5 girls. We need the results. And however we deliver the results in an inclusive way, that's how we need to operationalize DEI. So that's another thing.
And inclusivity will impact positively your results.
Exactly.
This is the message, which I think one key message, which we want to get across here. Yeah. Any other questions from the participants? Happy to take more. Robert.
Comment. I'm sorry. I saw a comment I found quite interesting from Robert.
Yeah, Robert.
Well, it says, as I listen, I want to build a list of everything big with DEI, and conversely, DEI cultivates low blind spot, exclusion, fear, insecurity, and so on. And that I find this interesting because it's again very common for people come to us and they talk about DEI, but there is a common approach when people go about it, which we call calling people out. Right? So you're not using the language, you're compromising on meritocracy, that you're just hiring this person for the sake of gender or age or whatever the case is. So we tend to call people out, and as a result of calling people out, people feel unsafe, insecure. Why am I doing something wrong? So there is another way to do a DEI or to go about it, which is we need to call people in. And this ability to call people in might require self-awareness. Be, more aware of yourself, the mistakes that you made, the experience of yourself. The people talk about discrimination. I will say, well, you might be discriminated in a certain way. It's not something alien to me because we all have similar experiences. And those storytelling, being vulnerable, collects and unifies people. And that's a much more stronger way to go about DEI. So I find that comment very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sujin. And I don't see any questions popping up otherwise. Maybe then also taking these comments, I wrote down 3 things which I took out of that conversation with the 3 of you. And one is related to what you said, Sujin, just now. Inclusion has a very strong link to belonging, and I think this is what we need to look at. We talked a little bit about transactional, and I think we need to go beyond just doing the functional, technical stuff about our work. We need to look beyond that and looking at the people, and when we start to look at the people, looking at the purpose which we are doing there, and building this up. And maybe one of the things we need to look at is individualism, and how we can then take individualism a little bit away and balance it maybe with a stronger sense of belonging, and with that creating a more inclusive environment. It's a bit one of the thoughts I took away. How you can do it is asking questions. I like that comment as well. It's I think came from Steve. Asking questions, for me, that's focus on learning. Recently, a lot of my conversations go to learning organization. So it's that asking the right question, focus on what you can learn from others. And I like that, making people think, because that's actually one of the drivers where we can then also translate inclusivity into business success. And for sure, change management and diversity are deeply interlinked. With an approach of change management, it's very difficult not to do it. You will, if you do change management right, you will be inclusive. And I think this is what I took away out of this conversation. So thank you very much to Betul, Sujin, Steve. It was a fantastic conversation. About inclusivity, about how we can drive change, about how we can make our organizations and our people in the organizations more successful. I want to, as this is the ACMP Singapore, we're very fresh. I want to invite maybe Leon a little bit to share his experience, and this is going beyond now inclusive. I mean, we are being inclusive, that we are including more members. And I want to have a little bit sharing from Leon. You recently became one of our ACMP Singapore members. How did your story evolve? How did you make the decision to join us?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So I joined the ACMP Global, and then when I was trying to look for affiliation, I'm looking for Philippines. Where's Philippines? There's nothing in there. So So I became unaffiliated, and then when I've seen the Singapore chapter, and it's the nearest geographically to where I am, and I got invited, so I readily joined in because joining an organization is to belong, as you said. You want to be in to feel that inclusion into a community where you have the same passion for change management, and I'm really looking for different point of view on what change management is, and just in the global ACMP global, just looking into the materials that are in there, the conversations that are the history of conversation that I can read from and I can learn from. There's a lot, and I really enjoyed it. I really dive deep into it on my first few weeks, reading all the conversations, reading all the materials that are published in there. And for people like me who has just joined in, it's really a lot of learning, and it's really making me see a lot of things from different perspectives and from different experiences. Because coming from my background, I know that change management is so complex. It always depends on context, and people see it differently. I think in one of our session in ACMP Singapore, I just cannot remember who, but somebody shared about the blind man and the elephant. That's really what it is. You always see it differently from where you are and from your context. And joining ACMP Singapore really opened a lot of new insights for me, and of course ACMP Global, because I'm always visiting the forums, the discussions in there, and that's why I think here in our context that we need to bring it into our context, in the context of the Asia Pacific, in the context of Southeast Asia, in the context of the Philippines, in the context of Singapore or any other countries within the region. I think that's very important. That's why we need a global one to have the global perspective, and then we need to somehow drill it down to specific contexts. And sometimes it drills down into our individual context as well. So, but you really need to be part of the whole, so that your individual context will be very effective when you're dealing with it. You can be very effective. That's what I mean to say. And we always have to build that triangle. I think that we are discussing today: diversity, inclusion, and inclusivity and equity. I think that's a triangle, and it always has to be a triangle, because there always have to be some tensioning within the triangle, because when you are promoting diversity, then you have to respect equity, and then you also have to respect inclusivity. If you just focus on one, then it becomes quite extreme. And it's the same way that if we have, I think what I've realized is, even though we have the knowledge, we have the experience, and we have the mission, we think that's a complete triangle, but really you have to combine knowledge and experience, because it's the same thing. What's the missing third leg is really, you need to find people who can help you, and you need to find people in the end. ACMP is such one organization, I think, that can really offer it to us. And I really, just reading the standard, I know that it's coming from different perspective. The ACMP standard, it's already what I said earlier, and what I'm telling everybody is, just seeing the standard, it's coming from everybody. Reading through it, it's already somehow made the investment from my side worth it to join the organization. And I know that the ACMP is still looking into improving the standard, coming up with a new version. I'm really looking forward to that, because I think that will really help everybody, because change management, change in itself is really quite complex. We can debate it all day, but if we are seeing it from different perspective, I think we will not be able to end the debate, because there's no winner or loser in that. As always, we can always be all winners, or we can always be all losers. It depends on how we deal with it, I think. And
I think from that perspective, it's how you look at it, right? If I'm a winner, I'm a winner, right?
Yes,
but it's fantastic that you bring up the standard, because this is just in the context of today's conversation. It's an excellent example. When it was created, it was a very inclusive endeavor, and now we're how they wanted to improve it. It's again a very inclusive matter. So thank you, Leon, for sharing everything. We are the Singapore chapter, but because in many of our neighboring countries there are no ACMP chapters, we are very inclusive in allowing all the neighboring chapters to join us as well. We also want to learn from the people in the region, and yeah, coming together as peers, coming together as change management practitioners, learning from each other, giving insights, sharing experience. But then I want to your list, Leon, I want to add something as well. Having fun together, and I think I hope this is the conversation today was enjoyable. I mean, it was enjoyable for me. It felt more like a coffee chat around the topic with great minds and with great learnings and great comments from all over. So yeah, please be on the lookout. There's more to come. There is more from us from ACMP Singapore. We will continue with virtual events for sure, because that will allow us to include our friends from Southeast Asia. There also will be in-person events for the people in Singapore that you actually can shake the hand and get to know each other on additional levels as well. Annie, do you want to share something as closing words?
No, I'm good. I'm so inspired from the discussion today, and thank you. A big thank you to all our speakers. Your insights is just invaluable. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all those who take time to join us today. Hope to catch up with you in our event. So big applause to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for those in this time zone, have a good lunch as well.
Thank you,
Thank you,
team.
team.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.